It is now 6 p.m. I'd like to call to order the meeting of the GRCSU. If we could all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. And I will entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
I'll make the motion.
Thank you, Mike. Any additions, deletions, changes, or discussion? I would like to add posting places under old business to discuss what we chose last time and if we still want to continue after some more information.
So that would be item C.
Item C. Would you amend your motion to?
Sure, I'll amend my motion to include a change to old business, including C under posting.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes unanimously. And now it's time for public comments. I do not see anyone online and anyone in the room. Okay, we'll move on. And the SU has now instituted a new agenda item of the GRCSU staff and student highlights. And today we'd like to welcome Jen McElmore and some of her esteemed staff, I guess, to present Proctor Junior Senior High School highlights.
Great. This has a presentation. So, for those of you who don't know me, I think pretty much everyone does. I'm the national at Proctor High School principal.
Mute him. Yeah, can you mute
Somebody's got
him?
to.
Okay, thanks.
You're good?
Yep.
Good, sir.
Who is a math educator in our building. And when asked about 3 weeks ago, or as part of that meeting, I really thought, you know, there's so many things that I could bring from Proctor that really speak about the great things we do there. We have an amazing theater program that is open to GRCSU. A quick plug, Legally Blonde's happening on April 26th and 27th. Feel free to check it out. We have an amazing music program. I've realized over the time of being a principal, though, that band instructors do not like on-the-spot band performances. They don't like being asked about that. So with more time, we certainly will bring those people in. But what I'm really proud of is our academics and the culture that we created. And so, Chris, if you want to get to the next slide. So at Proctor High School, we really have, two North Stars, two guiding focuses, the strategic plan and increasing and improving academics and literacy and math. And then we have a SIP goal where we'll see an increase of 10% in those students who meet or exceed proficiency as measured by VitCap. And so we really focus and talk about, as a staff, things that would improve student growth, increase high achievement, and addressing gaps in academics. We talk a lot about being on the same ship and rowing in the same direction, and we believe together that we can make a difference, and we see that results in our data and our students, and we were able to get off a comprehensive plan because of the hard work of my staff. And so every time I've asked them, what do you think of this? They come to me with great ideas, and I've realized, it's my third year at Proctor. It's about building a strong team and then getting out of their way so they can do great work. And every time I've asked for that, they've outperformed for me. So one of the things that we do, if you want to hit the next, we have a couple of really amazing school-wide activities that focus on academics. So we have our DEAR program, which is Drop Everything and Read. So 4 days a week, our students are silently reading for at least 15 to 20 minutes. In the first semester, they pick their own book, and then we do a school-wide read the second semester. And so you will see students at Proctor carrying books. I mean, it is a huge win for us that kids are just reading on their own and happily reading. And so they had started that the year before I got there, and it has just grown. In the past 3 years. We also have common writing assessments that we do 3 times a year, in which students get a prompt, they write about the prompt, and they are into it. They're filling up pages of paper. We make them handwrite it. And they're doing it. And then we use those prompts to calibrate our grading practices, to target things that we're seeing 7 through 12 as areas that we need to improve upon writing, and then the teachers will, in teams, create things for us to instruct upon in classrooms, and then we see that when we do direct instruction on the things that we're seeing as gaps in the next writing assessment, that's addressed, and we move forward from there. So it's really nice to see that happening. Patty has brought the stock market game to us, and we've had a couple of winners statewide last year where kids were either writing about investing or actually investing. And so that's something that we've done throughout the building. We also have math that we do on Tuesdays, so Patty has created little activities for us to engage in, to think about critical math problems, to increase fluency, and so we also do that school-wide. Last year we celebrated Pi Day. Here's my shirt. Where we had a little math Kahoot that the whole school did, and we ordered little pies for everybody to try to make math a little bit more fun. And this year I said, Patty, what are we going to do for Pi Day? Let's make it bigger and better, and she has answered the call to that. And so this year we have we've done this M cubed, which took a minute for me to realize that's the 3 M's there. And we did a March Madness about math because we've realized that math phobia is real. Like, kids really have a very strong visceral reaction to doing math when they get to the high school level, and they've labeled themselves as like, I'm not good at math. And so we're trying to just make it a little bit more fun. And so a couple of things to note before we go on to the next video is that Proctor loves a good competition. If you can make something competitive at Proctor, we will engage in that. And so Patty created this math competition for us and all of our advisory groups, which are groups 7 through 12 that meet once a day, get together, do some community building. She orchestrated this activity for us. And so you'll see this video that's coming up. If you click the next slide. The rules that we went over were everyone had to participate because we didn't want people to be like bystanders in math, and so every activity, everyone in the advisory had to do it, and then they had to get together and figure out what was the best answer, and then that went forward to enter into points. We had a leaderboard, you'll see that in the video, where people every day could see where their advisory was, and kids were checking this constantly. They were like, oh, here we are, where did we move up? And if you didn't follow the directions, because we know that tends to be an issue, you didn't receive points. Because we know on the VitCap, if you miss one thing on a reading direction, they will give you a 0 on that. So we really want kids to be paying attention to the directions that they're given. And so here's just sort of a glimpse of that fun that we had. And as he's getting that started, we also have this Wednesday weekly announcement that we do, and so you'll see this first person in the video.
So I gotta.
That's all right. Isaac, we don't normally wear hats and
play the
laces
sound
at
online if you
school.
want. I'll play the sound online if you.
Okay, but
Maybe not.
he's doing a weekly announcement, and we had a Spirit Week, and it was crazy hat day. So.
Yeah, I don't know. Unless.
The map.
It's not gonna work with the feedback.
It's not going to work.
Not with the feedback, sir.
Oh no.
How we get the sound.
Let's see. If you turn the mic off for the TV, it would work.
What's that?
If you turn the mic off for the TV, you wouldn't get the feedback. But I don't know how to do that.
All right, let's try this. Let's see if Mike Mo's our IT guy.
The math department is excited to launch the first ever March Math Madness, also known as M Cubed tournament. M Cubed will start with everyone celebrating Pi Day this Thursday, March 14th, with a Kahoot and pie. Daily TA competitions will begin on Monday, March 18th, and conclude Friday, March 29th. Prizes and trophies will be rewarded on Monday, April 1st, so sharpen your pencils and get ready to have some fun doing math.
Closed caption up.
Just music.
Okay, how many degrees are in a circle? Is that your final answer? That's the answer we're going with? Okay, let's check it. And 360, so we're gonna hit okay.
Okay, 16.
16? Is that what we're doing?
We're all in. I hope good question. That feels too easy.
Victorine, you're being shy.
Some of the others we can be saying.
62.
It's pretty, but it feels too easy. It feels way too easy today.
Okay.
52.
Another 5 points.
What is the perimeter of a swimming pool that is 97 feet in length and 17 feet wide? Give me the perimeter.
What is it?
Jack, yes.
Good job. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Team 1 or 2?
Team 2.
All right.
What kind of drugs is that? What kind of drugs is that?
So you don't often get to see kids actually cheering and excited about math, and so it's really nice to see. And of course, because we're such champions of math, and we believe that all people can do math, we've got a math problem for you guys to play today. Do you click over? Go ahead, Patty.
Thank you. Lisa Matson leaves the room.
Yeah.
Click over one that I took a picture of it in the next slide, so that people at home can do it. Colin, I'm counting on you.
We thought you tried to escape.
So I'm going to roll a die, and 3 times you're to fill the number in one of the 3 boxes that are to the left of the equals. The goal is to get the largest number possible when you simplify. So I have a 4. And the other end is once it's written down, you can't move it. So.
Cheated.
Come on, Patty. Come on, Patty.
2. And the last number is a 5.
Let's see, that would be,
You know me.
Looks like I have a 27 here. here. Does anyone have any?
I get a 27.
You got a 27?
Yeah.
Anything higher than a 27?
You gotta get higher than 27.
Yeah, well, it's whoever has like the highest, because if you put them in the wrong order, if you
I put
put
them.
something in the wrong order, you just get the wrong thing. No? Oh. Your trophies will be in the mail. Yeah. And we have one other one that we'll just leave over here in case you want to bring it home. These are just some of examples that we use with our kids. And we just really, I just can't echo how much, Miss Ryan has already said, like, oh, this is what we can do for next year now. That is, bigger and better than what we did this year. And so that's sort of Proctor High School in a nutshell.
Thank you.
Thank you. You set a high bar for everyone else.
And if I can send the video to people online.
I'll just drop the slide
Okay.
in the board folder.
Okay, great.
Thank
All
you.
right. Thank you. Thank you. Yep.
Yeah, thank you very
Thank you.
much for sharing.
Thank you, Penny. Thank you.
You didn't know you were gonna be doing math tonight.
So next up on the agenda is approval of minutes from March 19th. I'll take the motion.
I'll make the motion.
Thank you, Mike. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? And warrants are in the folder or your packets. Well, I'll entertain a motion to approve those.
So moved.
Thank you, Linda. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? And now we're up to the superintendent's report.
Thanks, Tina. It's been 2 weeks since we last met, so there's not a lot to really cover here. But I do have 3 quick items. I know Lisa's going to talk a little about this, or may talk about it, but we have begun the VIT-CAP testing in all our schools. The window opened up March 11th and closes May 3rd, and that includes the makeup dates as well. So hopefully we'll get the results back a little bit sooner than we have in the past, but we'll let you know. Also, the AOE facility condition assessments. I have placed a copy of these in each of the local district board folders, so they should be in there now. If you go in your board folders, you'll see a separate folder that says AOE facility condition assessments, and it'll have all of the school assessments for your district. So, Corey Valley will have all 5 schools, Rutland Town will have theirs, and Wells will have both Middletown and Wells Village. What I'd like to do is at our local districts meeting, we can take a look at that, begin discussing what the next step would be about developing 3 to 5 year plans with regard to these facility conditions. But also, I think these will help impact budget discussions as we move forward, as well as consolidation discussions. We take a look at, consolidation resources and programs and other things along those lines. So, but I just want to give everyone a heads up that those assessments are in the board folders. I am going to keep them in the April board folders. I'm not going to reload those each month, so they'll stay in your April local board folders. They'll always be in there, so you can always refer back to them. If you can't find it, obviously just reach out to myself or Christine, and we'll help you out with that. I know there's a legislative update on the bottom. I think it's going to be more of a placeholder between now and the end of the legislative session. Really not a lot to go through between, now, we met 2 weeks ago. There are items that I placed in the report just around bills that have made it through crossover. Just things for us to keep a close eye on. One of the items that I'm keeping a close eye on is on the BOCES and what that means just for our SU and, work with other supervisory districts and unions around us. So we'll kind of see what that happens, but this could be a positive thing for us as we look at collectively sharing or pooling resources, particularly in the area of special education, alternative programming, things along those lines. So we'll have a better understanding of what that looks like at the end of this, and really what the intent of the state or the intent of the bill is in terms of timing, probably in the next couple of weeks. And really, obviously PCBs, we are getting results back. We are looking at developing work plans in 2 of our schools. Rutland Town, we just received a work plan. Poole Elementary received a work plan around mitigation, remediation, removal of PCBs. So once we have a little more information, we'll share that out in our local districts. as well as information to our families. Right now, all that work still is being fully funded by the state. And you see, that it is interesting to see that in this current piece of legislation that once the drop or dip below a certain amount, $4 million, that they will pause the program. So what that means for some of our other schools who are not yet quite to the work plan phase, I know Middletown Springs, Wells Village, have yet to be tested. We'll kind of wait and see, but I think they're just trying to figure out how to pay for all this because, like I said, it's been a pretty costly program thus far. So, I mean, it's important, but it's cost a lot of money. So, and that's, like I said, really about it for right now. Just the past 2 weeks, not a lot going on. Yeah, any questions I can answer about it, legislative questions you have?
In your report, you also mentioned the healthcare plan was extended for 2 years. I thought that was pretty good to mention.
Yes, and this was information I think that VSBA shared out. I think it's been one of the drivers of our, thanks Tina, one of the drivers of our budgets is around healthcare. And I think people don't understand that, or maybe they don't, that all of our employees are under a statewide healthcare plan. That is not something that we as an SU negotiate or look, we don't shop around. That there's a statewide plan that our supervisory union, as well as all Vermont schools, districts, and unions are take part of, and that has this past year was a 16% increase. Does take a bit of a toll on our local budgets. One of the things they just announced is that they put kind of a 2-year freeze on this. They were they were trying to renegotiate, but they're going to take a pause on this as they figure out how to handle this and what this may look like moving forward for our districts, particularly looking at the budget crisis. So we'll kind of keep a close eye on that. Yes, Colin.
When they say freeze, they're talking about the negotiation aspect of the unions paying for it versus the school, right?
They're currently exploring it. They're not going back out to, they're not renegotiating. It's kind of staying pat right now where they kind of figure out what the next steps are with regard to this, with healthcare.
Yeah, I think it'd just be useful for a taxpayer perspective, though, regardless of a negotiation, whether the teachers are paying 50% or we're paying 50%, it's not going to change the healthcare total package. It's just a matter of cost shifting it to having someone pay out of their pocket more as far as our staff.
Sure. Yep.
Until they negotiate or change how the healthcare is actually being delivered and that expense, it's not going to make a difference on your tax bill, whether the teachers pay more or not.
Right. Yep. So, okay.
That's not 100% correct. So the negotiations look at what the split is between the teachers and the board. So if that split changes, that does impact budget. So right now we're at 80-20 split. So if that split was to say increase, if the board was to go to 85, that would increase budgets. And if the board's go to 75, that would decrease budgets. So those negotiations do impact our budgets.
And both times they've negotiated, it's gone against us. They have not found for us, they've always found for the teachers, or the union, or however you want to address it.
Moving on. Thank you very much, Chris. Now we're to Lisa's Assistant Superintendent report.
Thank you, everyone. Nice to see you. I did put a report in your packet, but again, it's only been a couple weeks since the board meeting, so there's not a lot new in there. What you do have, though, are 2 different data reports, and you must have wondered why there were 2 in there, and here's why. We had promised you a growth presentation, and we wanted to show that in the same format as what we had presented with you in the fall, so that it would be clear to you what it looked like, what the comparison was. But as you know, this is our first year piloting FastBridge, and so we're also trying to look at how do we analyze that data quickly, concisely, and effectively. And so we've been experimenting with a couple different formats for how to look at the data in summary fashion. And for those of you who are Corey Valley board members, you know that in the fall, when we presented fall data, there were many, 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 many slides for 6 schools all presenting their data. We're trying to figure out a more efficient way to present that information to you. So I'm going to, I know you have it all, but I'm going to explain the formatting and how the data is presented in the data presentation template, and some of our key takeaways. And then I'm going to share with you the other data table so that you can see a different way of looking at that information. And if the board has a preference for moving forward, if there's one or the other that seems to be more, again, concise, effective, transparent, effective for you, then give us that feedback and we'll try to move that moving forward. Do you have the... Perfect. And I'm not going to go through every slide because I know you have access to this as well, but I'll take you through some highlights. So for literacy, slide 4, and this is just a review again of which assessments are given in each of the grade levels for literacy. And then each of the reports behind that tab is related to literacy, and then you'll see the similar chart halfway through for math, and then the math assessments are there. So starting at the beginning, at the first, slide 5. So this is the early reading assessment, and this is a group screening report. So kindergarten and first grade are the 2 grade levels that this assessment is given at. And so you see the district average overall, and then you see the kindergarten averages and the first grade averages. And these are scored by risk level. So the color coding underneath, you can see the darkest pink is high risk, the medium pink is some risk, and the light purple is low risk. And that shows where our students fall on this assessment in both kindergarten and first grade and in the district overall. The first column is fall. You can see it's very small, but it's marked at the bottom, fall, winter, and then we'll have a third result come spring. The next report.
Did it say someplace the number of students that we're looking at? 150 students. This is, did I miss that someplace?
It's not in these reports.
Okay.
We have it on our end, we can see, of course.
Okay.
But I didn't do the numbers for this. Would you like that?
Well, it's just interesting to know, like, 47% of 50 or 47% of
15.
Yeah.
Yep.
Meredith has a question.
Go ahead, Meredith.
I just was wondering what the some risk versus high risk, like why you don't break out those 2 numbers. You lump them together.
Which percentages are which?
Yeah, I mean, you lump together some risk and high risk into, like, let's just look at the first one. It says 48%.
Yeah.
So I imagine it's, some risk is 35%. Why aren't those 2 numbers broken out more?
Yeah. This is, again, on the back end, you can, it's one of those software programs you can click and click and click and get more and more detailed information as you go down. This is the way that the report sort of generates itself to look at them together. And that's lined up with our MTSS system too, which is we're looking at which students are on track or low risk and which students are struggling and would benefit from some additional instruction or intervention. So we tend to look at both of those groups as students that we need to look at more closely. Again, we can put numbers in and percentages in for some of these bands in the future. We just have to manually do that. They don't come standardized in the reports.
And are those the bands that they choose? High risk, some risk, low risk? Because it seems like even on the top end of low risk, I mean, I could have someone who's proficient, but I could have someone who's very proficient. So to me, proficient would mean you're in your grade, right?
Yeah.
But very proficient is a first grader that's reading at a third grade level. So.
And I should have passed these out too. Tina had forwarded this and reminded me of these as well. But it's very hard to read. I'm sorry. I think it was taken from a picture, not a screenshot. But on the right-hand side, you can see where it says benchmarks, the definition of each of those risk levels. And Chris, were you able to put that in the drawing?
Yeah, so
also?
Jeff, Colin, and Meredith, in the board folder, there should be a document that says FastBridge. Okay, and Meredith's not ours. Okay,
Yeah.
fine. Okay, perfect. Thank you.
So you can see how they define that term. So advanced is very likely to meet grade level goals, low risk, some risk, and high risk, and what how they're defining those. For the kindergarten and first grade early assessments, they don't have an advanced column. It's not an option. They're just considered low risk at that time for the early grades. When we get to some of the later reports, you'll see advanced show up as a fourth category of scoring, but it's not offered on the assessment for the lower grades.
Because even some risk, unlikely to meet grade level goals. That doesn't seem like some risk. That seems like a high risk. If you're not on grade level, that's a high risk, right? Because we want you to be on grade level.
I think it's referring to how far away from meeting that goal you are. So if you're some risk, that means that there's a chance that you'll make it or that you'll fall just short of that grade level expectation, as opposed to high risk, which means it's very unlikely that you're going to meet that grade level goal, and most likely you're going to be very significantly away from that goal at the end of the year. So instead of being 3 months behind to 6 months behind in terms of a learning progression, you're going to be a year or a year and a half, or sometimes in some cases more, behind your peers. So that's a more significant marker. I'm going to move on to the next report because it looks a little different, and we can go through that one too. So same assessment. This is a side-by-side comparison and includes growth. So there's two parts to this chart. On the left-hand side are those risk levels again. You've got high risk, some risk, low risk, and again for these grade levels, advanced isn't an option. And you can see again fall and winter, what percentage of students were in each of those categories. So where it was not broken down on the first chart, it is broken down here. And you can see between the pink and the dark pink what the difference is. On the right-hand side is a growth report, and that's what we've been really focusing on. And the percentile chart is down at the bottom. It says student growth percentile. So the dark pink in this, and don't ask me why they use the same colors. Oh my goodness, it's two different reports. Why don't they use different colors? I don't know. Obviously, I'm not the software designer for this. But it's the same colors, but they mean something different in the chart on the right in this case. And so for the growth report, those same colors, the dark pink is flat growth, the light pink is modest growth, the purple is typical growth, so making like a year's growth over the course of a school year, being on track to make that growth, and the light purple is aggressive growth, so making more than 1 year's growth is the predicted outcome. Of course, it's the middle of the year here, so it's a prediction at this point for where students are. So for these students on this test, you can see how quickly students are growing in the skill areas that we're teaching them for this measurement.
Does it have ways that you can tell which groups are growing? So for instance, the 21% that are high growth or aggressive growth, are they from the low end of the spectrum, the middle, or the high? Does it show you that?
So the easiest way to see that is on the left-hand side, how the columns shift from fall to winter. So for example, in this case, in the fall, there was 17% of students in the high-risk category, and in the winter, there were 18%. So we have one or two more students. That could be a very small percentage that's changing that variable, but pretty much consistent scores. If it's within 1 point, it's not really shifting. In the middle, though, you can see in the fall we were at 31%, in the winter we were at 29%. That's a 3-point spread. That probably means something, and what it means is that we're moving more students out of that category. And where are they going? Well, you can see we had maybe one who went down, and we had another one or two who went up.
But it still
And
doesn't show growth, right?
No, but it shows the movement of where.
So one
we
went
move
up,
kids
one went down.
Some of the reports further back when you get into the older grades, you can see the change in the columns a little bit more dramatically, and you can really see like, oh, look, in the fall, we had a lot of kids in the high-risk area, and by winter, we dropped that by 7 percentile, or in the 10 percentile, like, that's a significant swing, and then we can see the corresponding rise in the other columns that shows where they're growing up.
So on the left, it doesn't show any significant change, right?
Other than the middle, I would
Right.
say, is.
A little bit, but not
statistically
even a lot.
significant.
But there's 21% on the right that have shown aggressive growth from fall to winter. So
So
my
she's saying that was a prediction.
No, well, that's.
No,
as
that's
of
what
right
happened.
now, that's where they're at.
But
They're
so my
showing
question is,
aggressive
are those students at the end, the middle, or the bottom? Is there a way to find out, like, which part of our
Yeah.
students are growing?
Yeah, because how do you see that in there, that 21% have, basically two kids have moved, up or down?
Like,
But wouldn't that 21% include all of the groups? That includes
all the
everybody.
groups.
So you could have somebody in the low group that made a big change.
Yes. And somebody in the high group who had a
Didn't.
bad day, right?
Right,
And
right.
stuff. So kids move all the time in their performance, right? And so, and their scores are shifting, their performance is shifting. And so the difference between them doesn't reflect a large shift in numbers from fall to winter, but where the kids are if they're growing or not is what's reflected on the right-hand side. And so overall, has the composition or the overall performance of this grade on this test changed significantly? No, but within the students that were tested, you can see how many of them are demonstrating typical or aggressive growth and how many of them are demonstrating flat and modest growth. And you can break it down on the back end, again, like we can look at it by school, by class, by grade, and we can look at who's growing and we can look at who's not. For this overall, you're seeing that the 18 and the 26%, so significantly less than half of your students are showing low growth, and more than half of your students are showing typical or aggressive growth. We want those growth numbers to be as high as we can get them. That's our goal, is to have typical or high growth for as many of our students as possible, because that means wherever they started and wherever they wound up, that one student, when you trace their data through, they're moving. And that's what we want to see, and what we're continuing to try and hold principals and teachers accountable for is, are your students moving? Are they growing? Are those numbers on the right-hand side for fall winter growth, are those purple columns bigger than those pink columns?
That's
So
why I'd like to see real numbers.
So theoretically, in spring, you would hope to see that number, the 21 may be 35.
Right.
So you see that progression.
Yeah.
So that's where we could see that next.
Yep. Yes, we want always the numbers to be going on the right-hand side to be going up, and the numbers on the left-hand side to be going down. Because that means we're moving kids, which is the whole point of all the work that we do. Let's take a look at just a couple more, Chris.
But we didn't have, so this is only showing growth in the winter from the fall, because there was no benchmark in the fall, okay?
Yeah. So this is, again, just another example. This is CBM reading, which is second and third graders. You can see the overall risk level for fall and for winter. And Tina, that district level one on the left-hand side where the columns are shifting, that was what I was sort of talking about before, that you can see in the fall, 65% of our students were in some risk or high risk. And you can see now that 57% are in that. So that's shifting up. That's telling us that we're decreasing the number of students who are at high risk, and we're increasing the number of students who are at low risk. So we're moving students overall. And that's what we want to see. And again, if it's 1 percentage point, 2 percentage points, it's probably not statistically significant, but if you can get, 3, 4 or more, then you can really see that that's a reliable data.
what is the district I guess I'm confused a little bit. Is this district for 2 through 9, or is it just 2 and 3?
2 and 3.
And then, so how does that, if 2 and 3 are both less than 65%, how did we get 65% for the district? It's something doesn't seem
No,
quite
no,
right.
I looked at that same thing when I was looking at these data charts, and I'm like, how do they get these numbers, right? And I cannot answer you how they get these numbers, but I agree.
But then how are we supposed to believe all the
So
numbers?
that's why I want real
Yeah.
numbers. I'd like to see like, you know.
I'm not blaming you,
60
but it
numbers
just
are in
doesn't make
high-
any sense.
Yeah, no.
What is this district number coming from?
I know exactly.
Yeah,
what you're
it doesn't have any.
Well, it has to come from somewhere because the data was inputted, so there's
Yeah.
got to be a base number someplace.
saying.
Yeah.
And the only way it gets inputted is when students take tests, so.
Right, and depending on how many take the test.
Yep.
So
But
you
it
could
should-
have,
yeah.
you could have 50 eligible, but maybe only 43 took the
Took the
test.
test,
Right.
yes. And we try and get makeups and get those percentages as high as we can.
But the average should be, like, you should
should
be
be
able to take
combined
the second
together.
and the third
Exactly.
together. It should be the average, so something's not,
Yeah.
Well,
does not
The way
compute.
that we had talked to FastBridge about this earlier in the fall, because we were seeing or earlier in the winter, because we were seeing some of those discrepancies too. And the one factor which is very challenging about this software, it helps us when we're working with students. It doesn't help us when we're reporting to external parties, right? So they do some of
Right,
some
because
of one,
you
some of
really,
another.
we're
It's-
looking at it, the only way you're gonna really understand it is if you see it on individual kids.
Yeah,
And that's
exactly.
the joy of statistics.
And for, again, we're looking at it at the class and the
Right.
student level, like this is trying to take that information and make it pretty for a public audience. But here's the difference in the numbers and the statistics. It's progress monitoring. And so this is a little bit of a complicated piece about FastBridge. So FastBridge has, say, the CVM test. That's a general reading comprehension test that you give to second and third graders. You give the screening test 3 times a year. And interventionists who are working with students who are struggling with comprehension can give that assessment as a progress monitoring tool during their 6 to 8 week intervention cycles. All the data gets reported in our 2nd through 3rd grade CBM for the district, which is, again, so complicated.
So the same kid can take the test multiple
They
times?
have multiple forms of the test that are used for
So
progress
the
monitoring.
data's skewed.
skewed.
So the district level, but the grade level data reflects grade level classes in your schools.
Yeah,
It's
but we'll
not
never be able to
average,
see
right?
that unless we go into executive session because most classes are too small to see grade level.
Well, I'm sorry, I mean the grade levels that are up there, the grade 2 and the grade 3.
Right, but this
Those
is-
are only 2nd graders and only 3rd graders in our district. It's the first box there on the left.
In our SU.
That is SU level data that has all the kids
Yeah.
taking that test. The 2nd grade and the 3rd grade boxes are only 2nd and 3rd graders.
So maybe the district one shouldn't be used because it's not actually it's
less-
not apples to apples, right?
Less helpful.
Right.
Yeah.
So
But
let's
there has
just,
to be something in the program that pretties it up for the public because, well, that's part of what we
these
have
are
to-
districts
And
though.
that's also why we're
Right.
playing with.
Yeah,
some
but
of
that's
the
something we
formats.
have to do when we talk about budgets, when we talk about promoting ourselves, when we talk about the strategic plan. If we cannot provide data that shows growth, that we sat here and want to talk about growth and talk about aggressive growth, but then it's, the data is really skewed when we're looking at it at this level, that there has to be something. We need to do better and sharing ourselves to the public that don't have kids in school. Because as we know, that's the group we're missing.
So for instance, I'm going to ignore the first district because the 2nd grade and the 3rd grade are our district numbers of the first time only the 2 times that they took the test, correct?
Are our SU numbers.
Are our SU numbers.
Okay.
So when we're looking at the SU numbers, there was a little bit of growth from 59% to 56% that were below the midline, right?
Yep.
That's 3%, but then I guess in the next slide, when you're talking about the growth, it doesn't seem to match up So that's what I'm wondering, is the growth, is that taking all of the tests that you do in intervention too? Because that would skew all our numbers, right?
Right. Those are supposed to be by benchmark category, so the.
So those are
growth
just the
numbers
2 tests again, or are those?
Should be just the 2 tests, yes. Because that's what, this is a screening report, so this is only for the screening periods, which are the 3 per year.
And all these tests are timed, correct?
No, not all of them.
Okay, do you know, sorry, what ones are timed and what ones are not timed?
Yep, also on that chart that was shared in the drive, for each of the tests, it tells you how many problems a student has to complete. Oh, I'm sorry, I don't think this one does tell you if it's timed or not. It just tells you how many that they have. So the automaticity tests are timed. So where it says auto, in like fast auto reading, that's a timed assessment. In CBM math automaticity, that's also a timed assessment. So those are the 2 that are, because that's measuring automaticity for students. How many they can get correct over a certain period of time.
So I guess going forward, I mean, this first handout doesn't really do anything for us. I mean, because we don't know in the one data point, how many times, one kid could have taken the test 10 times and had it put in there. And somebody else may have never taken the test.
I hope you didn't miss a kid in the fall and the spring.
Well, I mean, or
But yes, it's
kids
possible,
move in,
sure.
kids move out.
Yep. Well, and that's true also, and when you look at like some of your school level data that you'll all see at your local district levels, you know, some of your percentages, and that's why I told you, like, if it's only a percentile or 2, like, it's not statistically significant. And that's because you could also be testing a different number of children, going to your point about the numbers. Like, if you have a class of 17 in the fall, and then 2 students move out and 2 more move in,
Yeah.
you still have a class of 17, but you're not actually testing the same children. So, you know, and that's why looking at these as like averages and trends and patterns is where it's the most useful for us at this level. Because it's never, you know, it's never going to be an apples to apples because we have kids move in and out all the time.
That's why I think the growth piece maybe is the most important piece for us at this level. The growth piece, knowing that we started out here.
Yep.
Now, once we have a benchmark.
Yep.
That's where we started with X amount of kids, and then this is the growth.
Yep.
Because the other 2 pieces don't really hold a lot of water in my
Right. And you can't have growth if you weren't here. So you're not in part of
right,
that
but I
calculation.
think knowing real numbers has some validity too. When you say 37%, 30, you know. But I just think once you have the benchmarks, like in the spring, once you do it, now that you have a benchmark, it'll be easier. I mean, that's all I personally would be interested in seeing. I mean, I think at district levels, you can see different things, but at this level, we're really looking at the trending growth across the SU.
Yeah, and I mean, that's what we're focused on all the time, is growth.
Yeah.
Because, you know, sometimes you can't control where they come in, but you can
Sure.
control what impact you have on them over the course of a year as a teacher and as a school system, and like that we have control over, and so we always want to be striving for the highest numbers. I agree. I also think that the growth is the most relevant. And like the, you know, that benchmark breakdown on the left-hand side, that's high risk, low risk, and the different categories. Again, as a trend or a pattern, when the percentages are far enough off, you know, that can tell you a story over time of how students are doing.
Yeah, I think that this piece is the piece like here that we need to see what the benchmarks are and where they move. I guess I just don't think we need to see every, you know, these other 25 pages in here at this level. I think that's more district level. Because we want to see what the benchmarks are and we want to see the growth at this level across the SU.
Yeah, I think the growth makes perfect sense.
Well, I think this page,
Because
this is the page.
It's too, you know, you'd really want to know, you're looking at every second grader, you know, and that's, you know, statistics are very difficult when you're trying to put all these kids together. So when you see that there has been, you know, when we look at the growth chart over here in the spring and see that that has changed, then that will make more sense to us here.
Yeah.
And then you break it up, like Lisa said, into your, like, Corey Valley, and then we can break it up into different areas, or Rutland Town, or Wells Spring, where they can actually take a little bit closer look at some of the, this is really good.
I agree. I think that's really good this level view. Would you mind going to slide 21?
What was it, 21?
20.
20, thank you.
So this is just a little bit of analysis. This is some overview. So you've got all the detail you can look at, but some trends and patterns, again, where things were more significant.
Lisa, do you mind backing up to 20, which shows the math?
She's on.
Oh, sure.
No, she's on 21.
Oh, I thought she was on 20.
Thanks.
Because it's, yeah.
This is the math.
Yeah.
And it's the same that we were just looking at that we all liked for.
No.
Just want to make sure everyone has a chance to see that.
Yeah, and there are many multiple math tests. There are fewer math tests than there are literacy tests, so it's chunked better, because in early literacy, the tests are just different. For the lower grade levels, math, it gets to the same kind of test more quickly. So you have early math and A math are the only two math tests. So slide, sorry.
So on that far right,
Yeah.
when you look at the 21, 24, 29, 26, you're looking at a increase of 21% over the high risk. Is that correct? You're looking at an increase, progression, I should say. Maybe that's where we should use progression. Okay, and 24, and then 26 or 29. So in those individual groups, you're seeing progression.
Yes, you are seeing, what you're seeing here is you're seeing that 55% of students are making typical or aggressive growth in these math skills that are being assessed. So you have, again, more students making typical or aggressive growth than you do making flat or modest growth, which is, we always want to see that higher growth.
But we can still see by category how that they are moving, and that's important.
Well, that's not showing by category how they're moving. It's showing a little bit different. It's just showing growth. It's not showing
Right.
which category
Right.
they're in and which, you know.
Well, it does, because if you look at the bar graph on high risk, you're seeing a progression
You're
in
seeing
that
some
group.
there.
Right,
Yeah.
that's the important thing.
Yes, and again, going to your point, Mike, yes, again, you see from the columns, you can see some movement in how the kids are shifting with growth from fall to winter. And this is also a better data sampling to get those big picture trends out of, because this is grades 2 through 9. So it gives you multiple grade levels taking this. So when you're seeing swings and patterns in this data, it reflects a lot of students, and you can really see trends. Some of the K1 tests, if it's only given to a very small group of kids, it's harder to see those patterns sometimes. But you can see them much better here.
Mike, what I was trying to say is, so for instance, on the red column, it could be some people, on the right-hand side, sorry, in the 21%.
Right.
That could include some people in the light purple, because they may not have gotten any growth. They may have stayed the same because they're so high that they're doing very well in the test. So they might be, the light purple might be filling up all of the red, or it might be a combination. And so that's why I was asking if there's a way to break that up to show the growth within the categories. I know MapBrit, or whatever the other one, Map, used to be able to kind of show that on a, yeah, it gives us a little
We can
bit.
play with that and see if we can answer that
Yeah.
question simply and visually.
It's like you
And then,
said,
like,
the
usually-
colors are the same, but it's not the same.
No.
Yeah.
Usually we do that in a scatter plot.
Yeah.
Right.
Where we have
That would be fine.
all the kids' scores, and like you can see trends and.
So you see like the 9th grade class moved, or the 8th grade. Yeah, I think that's fine.
But it's still not gonna break it out by achievement level. We'd have to do a different, I'll play with it.
That's what I'd love
Start for.
to know.
That also might be something that's a little easier to do on the district level, because you're talking 2 through 9 for the entire SU. I mean, that's, if you're doing it for Rutland Town, it's going to be a much different look. So, I mean, I guess I'm just going to say, I don't know that it has to be broken out at this level for that. I think it's more like at a district level where that becomes important.
And really for us, we're looking at it at a school level, class level,
Sure.
student level, where it's like in this second, in Mrs. Jones's second grade class.
Yeah.
How are the students performing?
Right.
What growth are we seeing? Which kids are making growth? Are there kids that are not making growth? What's the plan for how we're going to address that? That's where that data is really useful.
Because at this level, what we're looking at is more a snapshot. And we're making the determination and looking at the snapshot, once the benchmark has been set, are the programs that we're using being successful? If we've switched to something, are they? And that's really where we are here. The next level at the district level is looking to see, is there a problem in, Mrs. Smith's classroom that hers isn't growing, or is that the cohort, or whatever it is, I think.
Or is there a teacher who's really figured this out and their kids are off the chart? We were just talking about one the other day. We had a first grade teacher whose scores were significantly higher than many of the other teachers, and good, let's get in that classroom with the principal. Let's look at what's going on. Let's see how we can share and build upon that success across the supervisory union.
But then the kids are variable too, so and they can be variable if you're doing it over a few years from 2 to 9th grade. There's a lot of variability in there. We have to keep that in mind, because teachers cannot always correct for that. That's a big challenge.
Every cohort is different, yes. And that's, again, why we look at growth, because it doesn't matter where they started. Are they moving? How much are they moving? How quickly are they moving?
And we just hope we stay with this program long enough to have some real benchmarks.
But just to kind of add to what you were saying, if all of the flat growth are the high achieving students, then as an SU, maybe we're not addressing the needs of all those students. So I do think it's actually important to have that information for the SU as well.
Sure, I guess it just, I guess to me that just breaks down more at the district building kind of administrative level, because we're, like I said, in my opinion, we're kind of more up here looking at it in terms of a snapshot. For the next level, that's what you're kind of looking at, right? And so if there is a problem that second graders are flat or whatever across Corey Valley, let's say, then I think that would be a conversation that we would come back to this board and say, listen, yeah, we're all using this program for math, but for whatever reason, our kids aren't showing any growth when we break down and look at the program we're using. So, I mean, I just think that 2 through 9 is like a huge number of kids to break down, in my opinion. I would rather have it broken down at a district level where it has a little more meaning for each district to look at, and have that with your building principal, and if Lisa's at the meeting or whoever else, your interventionist or whatever. Because also they're going to tell you, and yeah, you're probably going to have to be maybe an executive session for some of it because kids could be identified dependent upon classes, but they're also going to tell you, like, that growth isn't happening at the lower level, and now we need, another 0.6 interventionist for this because we have this cohort of kids or something. So.
Yeah, they can talk about specific strategies they're using at the building level to address some.
And then you bring it back to this, to talk about that after the fact.
Yeah.
Is that what you're,
Well, I just
little
think
bit too,
I
what
think
you're
it's good to
saying?
look at it from the SU level too. You know, if it's a need in all of the schools, maybe we need to address it.
Yeah.
And
I
without
think we
having.
bring it back.
and
from
if you
there.
bring it back, then you will find that out information. Is that, because I think we're all saying, that's what we're saying, we'd like to bring it back at the SU level to see how each district is doing and what's great.
I'm just saying, I think this
I'll say-
information's helpful.
If you break this down by schools, the only one school that has 2 through 9 in the same building, so that changes things too.
Yeah.
Think about it,
Right.
right?
Yep.
So that's,
And I'll just say from our perspective too, like if we were looking at the data system-wide and seeing that, high achievers in general were flatlining on this, like that would be a trend or a pattern that we would highlight in our analysis for you and share. And like we're not seeing that, although as Tina had mentioned before, like the higher a student score is, the harder it is to move that score. And so you see that you tend to see them increase at a slower rate than you do students who are at the bottom who are getting quality intervention and filling big gaps really quickly. So it can be tricky, but we're not seeing any massive shifts in where kids are moving. It's really kids at all levels are moving at different times, and
Well, the other
and the
piece
light bulb goes off.
we don't know also is, like, what is that score to move you to the next hump? So what do I need to score to move me from low risk to advanced risk, right? So if I'm on low risk, I can't be, can I be in the bottom of low risk? And then just move to the top of low risk? And then what do I have to do to jump? Like, do we know what those percentage points are that put you in the next category?
There are cutoff scores for each of these and the norms that we.
So that to me would be more interesting to know, like when you say there's growth, how they're jumping.
So I think, like, looking at this data at the SU level, that it might be, I don't know, it might make sense too if we can look at it on a grade by grade group, because this is 2 through 9 we're looking at for this math, but if we're going to look at this data, why not look at it at like grade level for the whole SU?
If you go to the 2 slides before this report, that's where it's broken out by grade level.
Okay.
So is that what we'll use as the district when we're doing the per school instead of whatever the district one, because the district one used in this was included all times that was
Every
done.
kid.
But when we are comparing it for our own school, local districts, we'll use the
it'll be by
benchmark
school.
ones. Okay.
And then you'll have the SU to look at as a comparison. Yeah.
But not the district one that you have here, the actual benchmark data.
Where it says district here, it means supervisory union.
Yeah.
FastBridge it's not set up to group students into sub-districts. It's either supervisory union or school.
But what I
There's
mean
not
is,
a
what,
subcategory in
but
between.
you said that the district one here encompasses all the times they've taken the test, not just the benchmark.
It can't, it's
So-
all kids who are tested.
So
in
when
that.
we are doing our local districts, so for instance, in 7th grade, it would be better to use the 7th grade plot that you have up there, because that's really more apples to apples, right? Because that's benchmark to benchmark.
Yes, district levels.
And that would be our SU number versus the district that you have here that has many times of the tests. Because we want to
Yes, and I think
compare
that
benchmark to benchmark.
I actually think that is also in the report that the principals see at their level too. There's a district for the grade level, and then there's the grade level. So if they put grade level comparisons in.
So are you talking about, the grade level is, that's the risk, right? It's broken down by grade level for the risk. I was talking about for growth.
Yeah, there is grade level growth data, then you're getting into like 70 pages of data charts. I don't know, I mean, they've got every grade level for every test. It's a lot of pages. I have the other chart though, we're gonna look at is broken out by grade level, the next one, the data table.
Okay.
Well, let me wrap this one up, I'm gonna show you the next one, and then you can talk about that one, and we can talk about what we like better. So just, again, some big trends and patterns here. Early reading, we're seeing solid growth across our schools. Early math, we are seeing 40% of students making aggressive growth from fall to winter, which is a really exciting trend. That's a lot of students making a very high level of growth. And similarly in the auto reading, which is reading fluency, we saw a third of our students making aggressive growth in grades 4 through 9 from fall to winter. So some really great strides there. And in A reading, which is an overall reading score, 31% of our students were making aggressive growth. So those are some promising numbers. Again, that aggressive growth means more than, where they're on track to make more than a full year's growth in a single year. So closing gaps, catching up, getting kids ready or pushing them ahead. And then just some areas of concern. We talked already about the small student cohorts contribute to high levels of variability across classrooms and schools. That's just the reality of our schools. Both A reading and A math, where students are assessed on broader areas of skill. It's not like just reading fluency or just basic foundational reading skills. It's putting everything together when they're reading. We have 21% of students making flat growth in both of those areas. So what we're seeing is that the foundational skills are growing more quickly. The more complex synthesis of skills, where kids have to use multiple skills at the same time and integrate them, is not making that same growth rate yet, which is kind of how kids learn, is that we get the basics first and then we do a better job at accelerated skills. So we're going to keep watching those numbers because we want to see that our students are able to then take those foundational skills and apply them in a new situation and use them for higher level work. And overall, on average, across all schools, all tests, all grades, about 40% of our students are making modest or flat growth. So our goal is to increase that. So really, like if we could increase that number by 10% by spring of next year, like that would be great. And we could go from 40% of our students making modest or flat growth and reduce that number even further and move them into the typical or aggressive growth. So that's what we're going to continue to work with teachers and principals on for our schools. And my last slide, I just put in some next steps. And none of these are new. These are all things that you've heard us talking about with strategic plan and other work that we're doing, but continuing to support implementation of our MTSS system, supporting our principals and teachers, supporting building level improvements, helping our teachers with whole class and small group interventions, and really when we say that we mean differentiation and like trying to meet every kid where they are and move them forward. FastBridge is still, again, a new system. We're all learning to use it and all learning how to get out what we want and how to put that to best use in our planning. So there's a lot of tools for teachers in there and helping them become familiar with them and use them in their day-to-day practice. This year is our first year of our secondary intervention model across 7 through 12. So same thing, we're doing a lot of tracking data, looking at what's effective, what's working, why, and trying to build that program. And our interventionists have been phenomenal leaders in terms of sharing resources, aligning their progress monitoring efforts, helping to keep things consistent across the supervisory union. They really clearly share that vision. They're great collaborators with each other. Just in the past 3 weeks, one interventionist went to observe an intervention that was being done in a different school building around peer-assisted literacy strategies. A separate interventionist went at a middle school class and observed an integrated lesson around reading comprehension that another interventionist was delivering in a small group. So they're sharing. They're really helping to build each other's capacity and knowledge of programs, knowledge of strategies. I can't speak enough about their leadership in our MTSS efforts. We're going to be looking at our math audit and ways that we can continue to focus on math, as Jen and Patty were talking about. We had a course offering for teachers around math block this spring that was hosted at Proctor Elementary, but was open to teachers from across the supervisory union. We're looking at our math curriculum. We had a middle school math meeting I think I spoke about last time, trying to accelerate that course sequence for students who are ready. And we're looking at our program evaluation, which you've heard about, and all the curriculum work that we have and trying to get to those sequence documents and common formative assessments across content areas and grade levels. And we've set aside some time for this summer to keep trying to work on that as well. So these are all the different sorts of things that we're doing to try and keep pushing that growth.
The only other piece of data that I think would be helpful as we're looking to build the budget is with the interventionists, if kind of going back to what Tina said about showing growth, but if we can show the growth from the low risk, so that when we're building the budget here and we're talking about interventionists or we're talking about adding them, we have some data to support that conversation. So we can say that, we were at 24% in, low risk, and now we're at 12, and that an interventionist has worked with those groups. So because I think those are going to be places when we start talking about budgets that are easy places to move people from.
Okay, I'm going to show you the other data presentation. This one is not as complicated. It won't take as long. But Chris is going to open the data table, and then I'm just going to, again, show you what you're looking at. So this is, we saw a template like this that was done by a different supervisory union that uses FastBridge, and this is how they presented their data to their board. Big picture, broad. So we are looking at the percentage of students who are at the low risk or advanced level. So those light purple and light purple categories is still what we're looking at, and it's just the overall percentage of kids who are at those 2 grade levels from fall to winter. And Chris, if you want to go to the next one. So here's kindergarten reading and math, 1st grade reading and math. You can see the fall. So in fall, that is the percentage of students who were at the low risk or advanced. And in winter, that is the percentage of students who are at the low risk or advanced. And that's 2 tests. It's the early reading test and the early math test. And then the same for 1st grade. That's the percentage of students who are at low risk or advanced in the fall, and the percentage that were at low risk or advanced in the winter for both early reading and early math. And there's multiple slides. They all look exactly the same, and they are broken out. In these, they have 3 tests at this grade level, which is why you see the 3 scores. And so those are broken out by grade level across the schools. This does not get to that growth piece. It just gives you the comparison of, it is the growth piece, but it's not sliced like the last one with the 4 different levels. This basically cuts it in half. So it's which kids are not making as much growth as we want to see, which is the dark pink and the light pink, which would be some risk or high risk, and which kids are the low risk or advanced, so making the kind of growth we'd see. And this is just which kids are making the kind of growth we want to see. What percentage of children are making the kind of growth that we want to see. So that's a super simplistic slice of growth data. Am I confusing you in my explanation?
I don't love this. I like the growth page. I like that page from the first thing, the page that shows that. That's the page, if I get that page for the spring, I'm happy with that.
This is benchmark, though. This isn't growth. You're saying that you're seeing growth. So, for instance, in the fall and winter for the CBM reading for third grade, they went from 41 to 42%. We're in
The high
low
growth
risk or
columns.
not growth, though. This is just benchmarks, I thought. So this isn't growth. It's
Risk
showing.
level, yes.
It's just showing risk level. It's
Sorry.
not showing growth.
Yes.
So
You are correct.
1% went up.
Risk level.
Right.
Too many data charts, too little time.
Yeah. So this is only showing benchmarks.
Yep.
And this was just brought to your attention, just to show you what other districts have done. So there's not, so
It's
we're
not
trying to-
new data.
We're trying to
This
get a
is on
better
the other-
understanding in terms of
yeah.
what the board would like to see in terms of data, so that we can go back and refine then. when we
Yeah.
have it
No,
in
nobody wants 50-page
spring, right.
slide
No.
decks.
And you have the data you're looking for as we're working through this. So, like I said, we're looking at what other districts have done.
Here are some
This is one
options. Yep.
Sample, but if this doesn't meet, the needs of the board, then that's fine. We have no problem scrapping this and just going back to the growth. So we're okay with that. We're just trying to, show you some, just options.
Yeah. So my vote is for like page 17. Like that model, that would be my vote. And then the only other piece I would like to know is the number of students. Just, that there's 182 first graders or whatever like that, but.
I like the other data better than the benchmark data that you just showed as well. I like having more information than less. I don't think we have to cover everything. But my 2 cents.
That is definitely the advice that we gave to our principals, especially our Quarry Valley principals, where you have many, many schools presenting data. We told them not to go through every data table and every chart at the board meeting. It's in the packet. People can look at it and see it and digest it. They've been sending them to Christine like crazy. She's putting them in those board drives. But it's really like, what stands out? Where are there significant trends, either positive or negative? What are you working on right now to do? What are you doing about it, right? So like, what's your areas of strength? What are your areas of concern? What are you doing about it? And that's really that level. And then you've got some big picture overviews of where students are.
Yeah, my
That's what people need to
expectation-
see, especially when you come up to budget time, when people come up to vote, they can see that there's a progression there. It's not going to be perfect, it's not going to be everybody, but if they can see that a student comes in at 0, just as a number, and by average now they're all up in the 7/8s, that says a lot for instruction leadership, it says a lot for instruction in the classroom, and then whatever aid might be needed for that. And that's what we need to be able to sell at budget time.
Yeah, I think we have to be cautious too, and like this is a slow-moving ship, right? So be cautious in seeing 3 data points and be like, oh, this isn't quite right. We need to make this shift or make that shift. As a parent, for the past year, I've been told that this is one snapshot in a larger picture. So, I appreciate the data, and the more it can be easily digested and then conveyed to like you said, the taxpayers and people that want to see the end product. I'm supportive of that, but I want to be careful how deep we scrutinize every data piece that we get. So because I get this stuff and like it'd be great if you could overlay what other areas and subjects they're doing within the classroom and then excelling at, because we've had that conversation with our children and stuff. So I try to look at it in one perspective of the overall. So that's kind of how I'm trying to look at it as a board member too.
Yep, doesn't tell you how our science program's doing.
Right. But I also have the expectation when we get to the district level, when our building admin come, that they're going to tell us like, okay, like we have a cohort that were struggling here, and so we need to do X, Y, and Z. And that, you know, collectively, they have met to try to figure out within Quarry Valley, you know, how to address that, because one other school is doing really well. So, I mean, I go back to that snapshot. For us, it's a snapshot, and it's the responsibility of you and our building admin to come to us and say, like, this is where the issue is, or this is, you know, these kids, and you're always going to have some weird class that's completely off the wall, you know, so, yeah. So I'm happy with that, and yeah, I think we're on the slow-moving train too. I think 10% is always a big bite to ask for when we put that in everything. Yeah, I'm always like, yeah, if we could get 5, I'd be happy with that.
We'll shoot for 10 and.
I know, but I know. In every SIP, everything we put 10, 10, 10, 10, and you know.
It's aggressive. 10 is an aggressive number.
100%. Yeah.
Yeah, I also like the growth part of it as well. And, you know, I kind of take the risk piece as kind of more what, you know, you and teachers and principals will use to identify those students, and really, without that specific information, it's I don't see it as beneficial as the growth. But, yeah. You know, and also say that, you know, thank you for the work you put into both of these presentations, because, you know, there's a lot there. There's a lot to digest. And
it's a new system, so we're all trying to learn how to use it and how to make it show us what we want to see for transparency. So.
All right, so thank you. Moving on, we have the VSBA update. Lisa or Linda, do you have anything to add?
Our meeting is actually next week.
Okay.
Yeah, everybody should know by now that the governor has put in a new secretary of education from Florida who has massive amounts of charter on her. She has 3 months of public education on her resume, which is really interesting.
Sounds like Vermont Digger article.
No, actually, I downloaded her.
Well, they did talk about that at the press conference.
Her
SBA,
resume.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's all really charter.
If we can't pass
Charter.
budgets, we may all become charter schools.
Yes. So, and it's pretty much Florida.
Yep.
And then I downloaded the VPA, the VSA, and the VBSA, what they wrote to the Vermont State Board of Education of what they expect from the next secretary. And that is 17 pages long of wants and needs. And I didn't get through it all, but I did read quite a bit of it. And if you look at this and you look at her resume, it really does not match what we are looking for and what they're presenting to. And the Senate has to approve it, and they have not approved it. I mean, they haven't come forward. They're going to meet with her. And the other thing, too, which I found was very interesting, was that the governor said she was going to spend 3 months talking to me, people like me. Instead of working, they're going to send her on a bus tour of Vermont to talk with people. What do you want? And Dan French did that 5 years ago, and here we are. So my feeling is that that's a really waste of time. Everybody, the VSA, the VPA, the VSBA, all have said, this is what you need to do. I think she should be jumping in the job if she gets it, and not go and do a bus tour of the world. I just don't get it. I wrote 2 letters to the governor. They were so inflammatory, of course I didn't send them, but it did make me feel better when I reread them, because I would have really liked to have sent them to him.
Abraham Lincoln used to do that, actually.
And I write that, it was a really good letter the first time, and then I kind of brought it back down so it wasn't so derogatory to the man. But I basically was like, what are you thinking?
part of that problem is coming in from out of state, you're not familiar, and so that's that's part of the challenge that comes with that. Why would the governor want somebody who's out of state?
But the State Board of Education was part of this also.
This is true, this is true, he's not to blame.
And so that's
Right.
just another indicator
Right.
of how out of touch.
Right, exactly.
The State Board of Education is, and why the VSBA was asking it about how people are appointed to the State Board of Education. You know, it's become one of those appointments of, I don't know, resume building for your funeral, for your obituary, I think, you know. But I think that they're incredibly out of touch, and they were standing right behind her with the governor as an endorsement at the press conference. So I think they too should be held accountable for this hiccup.
And I think that the AOA is undermanned, well, that's not underwomaned, undermanned, whatever. And now she'll get in there and probably get 15 new people to help her out when he knew a year ago that it was under everything. So I just don't get this at all. It makes it has no common sense to me that would happen. I just, you know, the VSBA and the VSA hold a conference every year of which none of the senators or representatives go, and certainly the governor hasn't shown up in any of them for a while, but yet they keep, you know, not talking to anybody, you know, no communication. I'll shut up. Okay.
There was an email today from the VSBA, so if you'd like to read it, it has more information on how to talk to senators, if you would like to.
Mhm.
All right.
Particularly those on the Education Committee.
All right, next up, personnel, contract recommendations. Let me pull that up.
I'll make a motion to approve as presented.
Thank you. And a copy will be put into the minutes, but I'll just list their names. Shannon Newell, who will be a new SU psychologist. Brian Lisco, Pulteney High School special education teacher, and Rebecca Hamilton, Proctor Elementary special education teacher. Does someone raise their hand? No. And then bargaining unit teacher contract salaries for Taylor Sherman, a West Rutland School special education teacher horizontal move, and Heather Proctor, speech and language pathologist horizontal move for West Rutland as well. And for informational purposes only, Megan Flynn, support staff.
I have a question. What is a bargaining unit teacher? What is that?
It just basically means it's part of the CBA, that it's a horizontal move. It's not a new position or a new contract, it just is part of the collectively bargained agreement that they
Collective
move.
bargain, okay.
So Lisa made a motion.
Call adjustment.
Okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? It's unanimous. Open positions are in the drive if you have any, if you'd like to take a look at those. And next up are monthly reports. Lewis, do you have anything to present?
I don't have anything to present tonight.
Okay. Are there any questions for Lewis? Thank you, Lewis. Next up is old business. I was hoping we could discuss ideas and maybe a date for the board retreat. Last year, we held it during our SU meeting time, not here. We held it at, I think, the Lake Bombazine Lodge and Tap Room. So what were the thoughts of the board this year? Did we want to hold it on the same day as a meeting? Do we want to have it as a separate event? Do we want to have it at central office? Do we want to have it at a restaurant or another location?
And do you want a facilitator, or do you want a facilitator?
And do you want a facilitator or not?
Yeah, I think if we're gonna have a retreat, and I think we should just have it here and definitely have a facilitator.
Yeah, I agree with that one.
Like, really get a facilitator.
How about looking at the district quality standards?
think a facilitator should be based on what we're talking about. I think if there's a need for facilitator, if we think that that is going to help move it in a direction, then we should have one. But to just say we're going to have a facilitator regardless, I think I'm not in favor of that.
So usually the board retreat is to discuss goals for the board for the year. So is that what you were thinking we would want a facilitator for?
Yeah.
And those come with costs, I believe, right?
Oh, yeah.
But shouldn't our goals be within the context of our strategic plan? What we, that should be part of our foundation as far as is, okay, we have a strategic plan. What goals do we have out of that strategic plan that we'd like to see help move that strategic plan forward? I don't think there should be goals from beyond that.
Anyone online like to add to the conversation?
I don't think I have a credible opinion. I missed the last 2 retreats, but I will do whatever the group thinks is right, understanding that Ira has a small slice of this.
Thank you, Jeff. Colin?
I'm indifferent to location. I thought last year was pleasant, but I think if it's going to be more oriented towards a facilitator, not that I necessarily think we need one at this point, I'd rather be at the central office. I think as far as the next year, it should be in line with strategic goals. My thoughts would be any kind of strategy we're talking over the next year involves how do we better communicate to the state, how do we better work with legislative body, with our taxpayers to make overarching change, which I don't think we need particularly a facilitator. I don't, unless I'm missing something that we're kind of at odds with this group as far as if we want to make a massive change inside of us. I don't see the need personally to have a facilitator this year, and I'd be happy to do it there or at a nice, I thought the lodge was nice upstairs, and kick back. And I think we really have the next 5 years, both inside and outside the SU, is going to be our battle with changes that are coming out of Montpelier, and how do we effectively institute change there would be more of what I'd be interested in talking about, and how do we put pieces outside of us to work, because we're just part of our SU, and at the local level, we're taking all the shrapnel from our taxpayers when in reality we don't have that big of an impact on any of this stuff. So how can we take our positions and better institute change?
Thank you, Colin. Tim or Lisa? Or Meredith?
I am in favor of using a facilitator and looking just based on what, like Colin just said, what the board goals are, not, the strategic plan is the strategic plan. That's different from our board goals. If we have a lot of people with different ideas about how to move this board forward, I think it's important to involve a facilitator to really get a chance to for people to weigh in on all these different ideas.
Lisa and Tim?
Well, I think probably the availability of facilitators, as we have seen recently, is limited, and it's going to be probably a VSBA person. I'm not really sure that's what we need, as for years we've had facilitators and put the papers on the wall and picked a color marker, and I'm not really sure that helped us facilitate any better goals. I think our goals need to come from the strategic plan. I guess I feel like we all need to be moving in the same direction, so our goals should be in line with the direction that the strategic plan is moving. If we're in a different place, then it doesn't seem like we're working in concert. So if we want to meet here, that's fine. I guess to me, it would depend on what the, who the facilitators are that are available.
And what they could bring and offer.
Yeah, it just seems like facilitators come with their own bag. And it's not always what we are looking for, so.
Tim?
Yeah, I haven't worked with a facilitator, so I just have to go based on other people's judgment on that. But I'll do my research a little bit between now and the next meeting, if that's on what they can offer and provide, and sort of their background. I mean, I'm kind of like the rule of thumb of having someone that might see the system in a different way. Like, so I don't know, like you said, VSBA, I don't know if I need someone from the VSBA to come in and, I'd like to have someone that sees it in a different purview, and might be able to offer some insight or advice, because I look at this like, it's not running a business, but in some respects it is, and some businesses are run very fluidly in a different manner than, probably what we might experience or see, but might work out just perfectly, so long story short. But so I got some research to do, and I'm indifferent. I think I missed last year's and I don't recall why. Someone might have been sick or something, so I wasn't even in attendance. I was at the previous years, so, and I thought some good positive things came out of those. So
Wellsprings has used facilitator for quite a few years. And, I think ultimately it just helps the board get to where, there's kind of a shared idea and consensus on those goals. And even if those ideas, come from the strategic plan, it's still part of it, in my opinion. But, I know two, maybe three people that, could facilitate something like this. And working with the facilitators, it usually starts with a meeting. So I don't know if that's something that maybe you would be interested in, to meet and have that conversation to say, this is where, what can you, how can you get the SU board to, so.
So where do you get your your facilitators from?
Let's see, Wellsprings has used a particular person 3 times now, I think. Yes. And let's see, the other person is from the VSBA. But again.
And the other person, I think, used to be with the VSBA.
No, the other person, it's an idea that I have. I'm not even going to go any farther than that. I would ask that person. So.
Meredith?
What I find helpful about a facilitator is that you hear or at least see voices that may not otherwise speak up in a meeting, or at least not get a lot of traction. And I find I see ideas that, not that I didn't consider, but I didn't really think maybe other people were putting forward. So I think it helps to broaden people's perspectives on what other board members are thinking about. Maybe, and a good facilitator will help shape those ideas. And some of them might be ideas that I really disagree with, but then I'm seeing them in a different light if a good facilitator does their job.
Why couldn't you come back with the list of facilitators and what they are, and price, and what their forte is with board work? So. And recommendations. I think that might be good as well.
Between Chris, Eric, and I, and
Sure.
if anyone else online had anyone in mind, please forward it to me.
And then we're looking to do it again July?
July
June?
2nd would be our SU meeting in July. So that's right before July 4th.
Yeah. Which might be interesting to get a facilitator at that time too.
The August meeting is August 6th.
Yeah.
Just
But I thought we had said before that we wanted to try to do the retreat earlier.
Well, this board last year said a lot of things. One thing they said was that we needed to rewrite the superintendent evaluation, that you wanted to set goals for the superintendent this month, because that we had waited too long to do that, because if you're setting goals for the superintendent at the retreat in July and you're going to evaluate in October, you haven't really done, given time to allow someone to have any time. The other thing was we had spoke about was setting goals and having them be goals for a couple of years, because the reality is other than the fact, like 1 year our goal was the merger for Act 46, most goals you're really not hitting in a 1 year span, in my opinion, or has been my experience, but maybe it'll be different.
Can I just add, my goals should be directly aligned to the SU board's goals. So the SU board should set their goals, and then my goals should be how I'm going to facilitate that, carry that out, correct?
Right.
So I think we just, with timing.
And it should go to the, my feeling is, our goals should be set to the strategic plan. I'd be interested, Meredith, in why you think it shouldn't be I always like to look at the opposite. Why don't you think goals should have anything to do with the strategic plan?
Oh, I didn't mean to say shouldn't have anything to do, but they could be beyond the strategic plan, I guess, because looking forward.
Because we have this document that's 5 years. So if we say what Lisa said about setting the goals, we might set the goals to go with the strategic plan. So we would review them in a year if we're looking at a time frame of setting a goal and saying we're going to look at it as the strategic plan looks at it too. That's a possibility. And then Chris's goals would be aligned. We would all be aligned together on moving forward with the strategic plan and how do we do that? Maybe that's part of the somebody that would come in as to how do we align our goals if we're saying it's aligned with the strategic plan, and if we threw in the superintendent's goals, somebody would help us get to the end of that.
So then the question is, do we do that, aim for July, aim for August, or move it to a different date?
I think it should be July.
I think you're going to have to build it around the facilitator.
Right, okay.
So why don't we aim for July, and I'll do the research with Chris on the facilitator, and we'll come back next month and figure that out. Does that
Sounds good.
Yeah, and Eric's going to give us names. Does that sound good to everyone?
Sounds like a plan.
Okay. All right. Next up is.
Can we formulate some sort of Google Calendar? If we're going to be effective, it'd be nice to nail down everyone's probably. I am traveling throughout the summer, or rather July. I'd like to sooner rather than later have the possibilities of dates, and I think getting a facilitator first, because I'd rather have the person we'd like to do it give us their availability versus us saying we're doing this date and we'll pick whoever we can get, just because that's all we have. So let's kind of make this a priority. If we're going to have a facilitator and we're going to target July, we need to come up with that date sooner rather than later before people are traveling. Effectively speaking, it'd be nice if everybody was there.
So I think we're aiming for the SU meeting night, Colin, July 2nd. And we're going to try to make that work. And if it doesn't, but there's another date right around there, I guess I could email the board out for a date and see if that works. But I think
Or I
we're
think
going to
if
bring
you
back
just come
information.
back at the next
May.
meeting with availability dates from the facilitators and sharing with them that is our preference. But, before, sometimes when we've done retreats, we've done them off meeting nights, we've done them, so you start a little earlier rather than, we've had retreats where we did them at 10 o'clock, we've done them,
On a Saturday, I'm hoping.
yeah.
Not on
So,
an evening.
I don't really want to do that in July, but.
I agree with
But
you, Colin,
6
but that is the date of our meeting, so that's something that if we don't like July 2nd as a meeting date, now's the time to change it, right?
Well, I think you can come back in May with the availability of facilitators. We can look at who they are, if they hit the marks for us, and we can decide at that meeting, right? So,
Is that going to give you enough time, Colin?
That's what he's trying to say, I think.
that it doesn't.
A May meeting?
Yeah, if we can make, and for everybody, I mean, again, if we're gonna be paying for a facilitator, it'd be very beneficial for this group,
Yeah.
for team building and facilitation, that every single person can be there. So the
Yeah.
quicker we know that, everyone can build their schedule, but ideally, you'd like to do this in January or February.
If I only
Yes.
find one person interested and they're only available certain dates, I will let everyone know before the meeting, but otherwise, I'll bring it back at the May meeting. Okay? All right. The next up were the meeting dates and locations. At the end of our last meeting, we started talking, or Lewis had mentioned something about having carousel meetings to try to reduce the load on Chris and Lewis for the amount of meetings that there are a month. So I just wanted to bring it up for another discussion if anyone had any other thoughts. And Chris, I had asked if you had an idea of changing it
Well, I mean,
to present.
yeah, I mean, I don't think the sole impetus is just so it's make Lewis and I's life easier. I think it's, I think that's, I mean, it's always nice for me as I look at my monthly calendar to try to reduce nightly meetings. That's great, but I think, carousel meetings, we've done them in the past to around, warnings, town meeting time. I think as I looked at from the logistics of this, and I guess in theory what it is that we'd all come together as an SU, all the boards would be physically in one location, and then we'd have the, one big meeting, then if individual boards could then recess to do their own work. Logistically, how is that going to work? And when I talked to the admin team about this afternoon, I could see realistically maybe 2 or 3 times a year when that might be a great idea, is, coming around data or, some sort of presentation where it makes sense for all of us to come together at the time as one board, and we're hearing the same presentation, and then we can then dismiss in our, local boards. But I'm not quite sure how, from a logistics standpoint, how it really works, because we are such a large SU, and you still want to have participation in the hybrid. So I think it's nice. I know we talked about before about having the SU rotate, but going before local boards. But in doing that would throw off the whole policy process, because then the SU board might be after a local district board, which I think Eric might lose his mind because he finally got this hammered down. And then, so I think, I want to make sure that if we're doing something that's really doing it for the right reasons, but we're not just haphazardly moving forward with this, because really there's a lot of great work that needs to be done over the course of this next year. We have a lot of big discussions that need to take place, particularly around, as we look at growth, we look at achievement, we look at strategic plan, we look at before about consolidation, programs, resources. We talk about ed funding, what's happening across the state. I don't want to compromise any of those big discussions at any time, by trying to, conveniently just, mess with the meeting. So I think while I just look at it and say it would be nice, but I still don't, logistically, I just don't know how it's going to really work just with our current setup. We're just a large demographic. I mean, outside of just, if we had like a meeting, then people would go, then people would satellite in, like Wells Springs is at Wells Village School, and Corey Valley is, here at West Rutland, Rutland Town's there, and we all come in for one big virtual, and then we go back to our local, but what does that really look like? So I think it's messy still, and I don't know if it's, to be honest, I'll just say I don't know if it's possible. I know, Meredith or Lewis or someone who's maybe experienced this before, but I just don't want to do this all of a sudden we lose something in our board meetings either. So, I mean, to me, I'll be honest, the nice thing is our board meetings are efficient. We really stick to 2 hours and stick to business, and that'd be great. But so,
Meredith?
I mean, maybe Lewis wants to speak to this, but what I remember being, at least hearing what was most challenging for staff was preparing for all those meetings on one night. Getting the latest whatever reports, et cetera. And as convenient as it was to meet one night, it was a lot of work loaded up to be prepared for the meeting.
Maybe that's why we don't do it anymore, because of that.
Colin?
Good reason.
I mean, I would listen to Chris saying maybe potentially he could look at 2 or 3 days. I would leave it to him and Lewis. I mean, as in putting my employer cap on, attrition around the state and supervisors and watching the amount of work that they have to do and going to every single meeting, that takes a toll on you. Being away from your family, you're working all day, you're going to these sites all day, and then to be multiple nights all over the place. If you guys can come up with a few nights a year, or a few months you can consolidate, I'd leave it to you to propose whatever you think is sufficient for you guys, because, especially with my hat on, I mean, one night a month's better for me than 2, but you guys are doing this all over the place, and I hope other districts look at this too, because they have, central admin people that are running all over the place, and that takes a major toll on your personal life. So anything you guys think works for you, I'd be, happy to entertain and make work for us, because ultimately, you got to have a balance in life too.
I could see us doing it around data presentations. In our old SU, we did not do a lot of carousel meetings. We did them around if there was something happening and we needed to sign something and everybody needed to be there, let's say to pass it or something like that. But we didn't historically have the SU meeting and then break out into other meetings. And Mike could speak to this as well. I think just personally, when I think about Corey Valley and the work that we have to do within our district as we're thinking about, any kind of changes, movement, or anything like that, if we sat here at 6 o'clock for an hour and a half, and then break out at 7 o'clock to go to the next meeting, I mean, everybody knows the longer the meeting goes on, we've all been at work or whatever, you start to kind of lose your momentum. But with respect to, like, if we were going to be doing, data, like having meetings here at the SU, have them be data-based meetings, 3 times a year, and then break out and talk about data within our own districts, I think that certainly makes sense. But just for general meetings, I just feel like every district has a lot of stuff on their plate and are talking about a lot of things that are pretty personal and how they could, if we're not all thinking about what we can do to be successful come March next year, that's really what we have to be doing at every meeting as we talk about movement, changes, or anything like that, how that's going to impact us at March meeting. And just, we've been talking a little bit about it in Corey Valley, but I think, we have some changes we have to make to continue to be viable and successful.
So if we would come back to the May meeting go around data, because I know as we put together a data, a calendar for presentations, and we look at fall, winter, and spring, would that be something that this board would be willing to take a look at? Maybe a carousel meeting on those those dates of the FastBridge presentations, or data presentations.
I would for that. I think that makes sense, because then I think you have all the players here, and then people can kind of move and have those conversations, so.
So you mean, so you wouldn't have them at the local level?
Well, you'd have them you'd have, like Lisa presented, you have the SU, and then the boards would break out, and then they would go discuss their local districts' data at that same night.
So it would be a separate night than our regular meeting?
No, I'm not asking for another night.
No, it would be your regular meeting. So let's say.
But we all meet on different nights, that's what I'm trying to say. So it would be an extra night for our local boards then?
No.
No.
So let's say in May, let's say this month we decided was a data report out night. Everybody would meet.
For the SU?
For every.
All local and SU?
Yes, would meet.
So in May, we would have no second
Right,
week of
so
meetings.
like, if this was the data report meeting.
So we have to take that back to the local boards to ask, right? Because that would be a local decision to change theirs.
As I said, as I preface this, logistically, this is, like I said, it's a nightmare. And I know that, having worked with every board, I think all of our boards hold our board meetings near and dear. And I think the thought of anyone losing a meeting, to something is scary. And as I said, that we have a lot of work to be done. I'm just asking, because this was asked to be brought back up, where, how to look to consolidate meetings or this, that, as Colin said, there are a lot of nights. And while, for some of you who have 2 or 3 nights, I'm looking at some, months, I'm looking at 15 or 16 nights during the month with all the different meetings that I have to attend and be at, and I show up at every one of them in person for the most part, with except for our policy. So I think we're looking at just, is there a way to streamline some of the work? But I've even said where, board meetings being more efficient with our, their time, looking at, what we had, what's really being discussed, what, action is also a help too, like, if, but
Well,
I
just
also don't
think-
want to shortcut work that needs to be done.
No,
because
but the
there's a lot of
data then just seems to be like, kind of the same thing over and over. It's a little bit like, not to be disrespectful, but what the superintendent's report at every meeting, or, like that. So if we picked like, I don't know, when we test in the fall, if you had results in November, because you're not in budget season yet. If you did it again in well, March is sometimes weird because it's reorg, so.
Which is why we didn't do it in March.
So if you
We
did
had the
it,
data in March, but
you did it in April, and then you did it like again in June, which are usually kind of flat meetings anyway, because you're ended the school year. I think that would be okay.
I'd be open to trying it for June, but
yeah,
and see how it goes.
I understand going back to local boards, but I think local boards also kind of have to be like what Colin said, think about Chris, who was at every meeting, and so if you can hear the report once from Lisa, rather than have her come to half a dozen different meetings, I don't think that's the worst thing. I also don't think it's the worst thing that other board members attend SU meetings and kind of have a better breadth of what's happening across the SU. So if you did that 3 times a year, I think that invites them in a little bit more too. And I don't think if you're doing it 3 times a year, that's shortcutting anyone. November is kind of a law meeting anyway, because you are, maybe we're doing the SU budget, but you're getting ready for Thanksgiving break. April.
But here's my question. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, go ahead.
So we start with that, right? And
Yeah.
then we all break up into our own local meetings. So
Yeah.
where does Chris go?
Wherever he wants to.
He
Right?
wanders. That's what
Yeah.
they do. They wander.
So we would be.
Logistically, I'm still working through what
Yeah.
this.
Well, that's
the way.
That was my question.
I just want to, I appreciate people, think about me, but I just want to say, I also know what I signed up for too. So it's like,
Right.
I understand that meetings are a part of this position, this job. So it's, if we stay in the current format, I'm, like I said, I will still show up every night. I'll be be there, I'll do the job, this, that. I think, we just have to look at it, if there was a reason for us to move, it's, it's not just out of convenience, I want to make sure that we're still doing good work. And that's because I said, we have a lot of work that needs to be done this next year on a variety of levels. I just want to make sure that we're still getting that work done. We still have those times, because those meeting times are precious for us to engage in conversations, and
Right.
even if only one member of the public show up, then that's great. But so like I said, I don't know how it's going to.
They are board meetings. They're not Chris's meetings. So even
No,
tonight, I mean, we could have handled pretty much the entire agenda to this level. I mean, with the exception of Lisa giving her report, right? So, I mean, if it's data information, you also have your building admin there with you who are just as well informed to be having those kinds of conversations with us as a board. I mean, we've had meetings before when the superintendent hasn't been here, and we have, gotten through them okay. So, and I don't think it's just Chris. I mean, it's everybody else that has to come like that with it. So, I mean, I think trying it, 3 times, I don't think that, the worst thing that happens is it doesn't work and we go, this really sucked a big dog and we're not going to do it.
Or try it once. Try it
But I think
once.
you could also,
Try it once.
a local district can still opt out. I mean, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to my board and be like, there's 3 of us that are here anyways, so 2 of you guys can sacrifice. And if we got to go longer one night, I'd rather blow it all out in one Tuesday than 2 Tuesdays in a row, like I've been doing. So, but potentially another group says, hey, it's too far, we don't want to do that. So at least we can shave down some of the meetings.
Sure.
Or they could
Definitely
come
work 3 or 4
via
times a year. I could see this working out. If not,
hybrid.
Right. We could all meet at our local schools and just
Right.
hybrid here.
We could do hybrid, and then we'd still all be.
Hybrid is similar.
Yeah.
For a solution, looking for a problem. I think, it's been going along pretty good. Now we're looking for a solution. We have a solution, we were looking for a problem to solve it,
I don't know. I do think with data, we do hear the data over and over again. And for those of us that have already been here, you're just kind of like, so.
I think tonight, after Lisa presented, I think it would be nice then, because I think a lot of the questions like what we'd like to see with the local districts.
Right.
As opposed to waiting a week, we then would be able to, recess and then, go back and take a look at your schools, your local districts, have those conversations. Really, we start to kind of,
How would that work for PEG TV?
What's that?
Whoever wants to do it. Those
I know,
are not
I-
like my biggest
It's not a
concerns.
requirement. It's not a
Don't break the
requirement.
fourth wall.
All we have to do is warn
Not
it,
here, so.
right?
I don't
Hire more
know. To
people,
me,
I
those are not like the
Sorry,
biggest
I missed it.
concerns.
All we have to do
We
is
can
warn the
send
meeting.
recording
What
links
it
to
is.
PEG
PEG
TV as well,
TV is,
yeah.
doesn't have to be here.
Yeah.
It's not, it's,
Just
So
nice
I
that they
think
are.
we should try it. Would we have spring data for June?
So
It's like the first week of June, so.
I would like
Okay.
to maybe look at the fall being the first time we do it, just to have some time to work through.
Okay.
If that's
Fine.
okay.
Eric had something to say.
Yeah, so I'm not opposed to looking into the carousel idea. I think it would be great to try and consolidate some meetings and, but, I do, there's a lot of variables and I think, my concern is the length of time, not all board members, can have the time to, if we're are we gonna meet early? And then local boards are gonna be later, or, so there's things to consider. Not everyone can get off work early, or who wants to be in meetings for 4 hours on the evening. And I know that's kind of the trade-off, or more.
Yeah, but the other option is you do the
But,
hybrid, and so you're at Wells.
I understand that, there's a hybrid option where, local people, we can just, call in, so that, but I think, it's definitely worth looking into, but, I don't know. Like Tina said, local boards would need to kind of, agree to this as well, before going anywhere.
Yeah. And that's why I say we push it back to the fall. Gives a lot of time for the local board to say no.
That's right.
I mean, I'm just, I'm saying, but that's.
Trying
but
it
you
one
work-
time in the
and I'm not
fall, I
saying
don't
that
think it's gonna make
you
us
work through
deal.
logistics, and it just may seem like it's problematic, and so I think, and that's fine, I think, and I appreciate the 4-hour meetings, but I also, and I'll just say, I do, when we look at the times listed on the agenda, we never follow the times anyways, so that's just, it's, because in theory, really, like I said, we have a meeting well below 2 hours, but we go well above that,
Well, maybe we can make this one of our board goals in July.
So Colin had brought up the fact that we're meeting July 2nd for our next meeting. Is that okay with everyone being so close to the 4th, or do we want to try to move it for the SU?
Well, I thought we were gonna find out when facilitators were available.
Well, before I speak to the facilitator, if we already know that we want to move it a week earlier, for instance.
Well, a week
Really keep it
earlier
the
is gonna
same.
be in June.
Mm-hmm.
And that's literally right after graduation. That's tough.
I would just say,
Leave it
why
the way
don't
it
we
is.
Just leave it July 2nd for now, and that's the
Or why don't,
facilitator.
yeah, and then if that doesn't work, we'll
See,
move
Okay.
it with the.
readjust.
All right.
Yeah.
Just asking. Last thing, posting places. We had discussed that we were going to post information on Front Porch Forum and at post offices. The Front Porch Forum, if it's coming from the SU, it does cost money. So I wanted to ask the board, I don't know how much it costs. This is from Christine.
Eric, you've done some research on this, haven't you, about the
I think
cost?
At one point in time, and this come from Christine, I think she said that there was a GRCSU Front Porch Forum, and it encompassed all the districts, and I think it was maybe $1,200 a year or more. I'd have to go back and look in my email.
That doesn't seem worth it.
I make a motion, we rescind the posting places from Front Porch Forum and the post office. It's a motion.
Okay, thank you, Mike. Any more discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous. Thank you.
Any opposed?
Excuse me?
Any opposed?
Any opposed? No. Thank you. Well, I heard everyone's yeses, so. All right. Next, new business, nothing listed on the agenda. Up next, policy. We have 4 first read policies, no, 5, sorry. E10, options-based response to violent intruder drills, fire drills, and emergency preparedness. E13, prevention of conflict of interest and procurement. E16, security cameras. F18, the local wellness policy. And G1, curriculum development and coordination. I will take a motion for all of those at once.
So moved.
Thank you, Linda. Any discussion?
Any questions?
Ask one question on E10. We had, as an SU, approved one back in August that was so similar. What was the reason to bring it back again?
So, and I'm trying to do this from memory. Because of the short time that the policy, the VSBA developed a policy based off statute to get it out for boards to adopt by April or August 2nd. After that, I think there was more guidance that came from the AOE. And so I think they had revised it, the language based off of that.
Okay, so it wasn't a big change, it was just a little.
No, it wasn't a change at all. And this is the model policy that's on there. And then this, so if you look at
Number 6, I think.
E2, school crisis prevention and response, that's to be rescinded. This basically replaces that, so to answer that question.
Any more questions or discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? It's unanimous. All right, and then there were 3 policies for rescinding, B2, E2, and F10. I'll take a motion.
I'll make the motion.
Thank you, Mike. Any discussion or questions?
Just to clarify, for the motions, this is to, like,
Rescind.
to warn it,
To warn to rescind.
and then to warn to adopt, because they're first
Yes.
reading. Okay.
Yep. So it's like a first rescind. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
Is that what you understood your
Absolutely.
motion to be?
Well, just wanted to make sure, because they will be, warned, before we adopt them next
Yep.
month.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Roll call if it's electronic, if you have one opposed.
Was someone opposed, or was it just a late yay? Okay, it was just a late yay. Yeah, it's unanimous. All right, moving on. Thank you, Eric. General public comments. It looks like we have just Eric here. Sounds good. Sounds good.
Next week.
Next meeting date and future agenda items. So May 7th is the next meeting date. For future agenda items, I had seen if the legislators could come to give us an update. I don't know, the board wanted that in May or June.
So they'll still be in session in May, won't they?
Yeah,
So probably June.
June, so aim for June.
I think we should name them specifically.
So we want Senators Collmore, Weeks, and Williams to be invited, as well as our reps, Tom Burdett, Art Peterson, Paul Clifford, and
Patty McCoy.
Patty McCoy's Polteny. And there might be one more I'm missing.
But Shaw is ours.
But Shaw,
I have a list, so I'll divide all of ours.
okay, thank you.
Isn't it Robin Chestnut Tangerman?
Yeah, so I have a list of all the SU representatives and senators, state senators, so I'll invite all of them to the meeting, so, yes. Because Robin Chestnut Tangerman is one of our representatives. Yep.
Perfect. And then we'll get a wellness center update for next month. Will we also be discussing summer plans? Is that local more than SU?
That's more local.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's really the Boys and Girls Club, with the exception of Middletown and Wells Springs this summer. So, but that'll be local districts. So. And I think admins we'll start talking about that, I think, the next week. Should be part of the report, too.
Thank you. All right. We no longer need an executive session this evening.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
All right, Mike has made a motion to adjourn. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
Thanks.
We're adjourned at 8:15 p.m.